But unfortunately, we begin with a story that broke late yesterday, and a very sad one from the world of sports, and especially for the world of NASCAR. Kyle Busch passes away unexpectedly at the age of 41. The Busch family, Richard Childress Racing, and NASCAR issued a statement saying, on behalf of the Busch family, everyone at Childress Racing and all of NASCAR devastated to announce the sudden and tragic passing of Kyle Busch. Meanwhile, 11 days ago, Busch radioed into his crew near the end of a Cup Series race, asking a doctor to give him a shot after he finished the race. According to the TV broadcast, he had been struggling with a sinus cold and was exacerbated by some G-forces, of course, that you get when you race around the course. So very, very sad news from the world of sports yesterday. All right. Meanwhile, on a brighter note, we'll get back to the National Football League. If you thought the last season of Aaron Rodgers was going to be accompanied by the last season of Matthew Stafford, you would be wrong, as Stafford signs a contract extension that will keep him with the Rams for another year, $55 million. He's now tied with the club through the 2027 season, and he has $105 million left on his current contract that he signed. So Stafford certainly looks like he'll be back this season and next season in the National Football League. Meanwhile, the Knicks took care of business pretty easily again yesterday, 109-93. They win and cover as 5.5-point favorites. And Josh Hart was the stunner yesterday. He had 26 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists. The Knicks have now won 9 straight playoff games this season for Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell had 26. James Harden, another point of contention game. He had 18 points and 6 rebounds. But let's get started with the head coaches and hear from Mike Brown, who talked about somewhat of a different approach heading into Game 2.
You know, after coming off a thrilling comeback like that, do you coach it all to the emotions of, you know, settling down and being ready for the next game after a game like that?
It's a good question. Not really. You know, we have a veteran group. You know, anytime you're in the playoffs, you obviously need a little bit of talent. You need a little bit of luck, and then you need a little bit of skill, and you know, all those things came into play for us. You know, coming back from 20 points down with that little bit of time to go, and I think our guys understand that we got away with one, and we don't want to put ourselves in that position again, because Cleveland's a great team. They're well coached, and they have great players on their team, and they're not going to let that opportunity slip from their hands again. So, you know, we've talked about that, but not necessarily about the emotional part.
You know, could easily stole game one. I thought our process was right tonight, so that gives me confidence going home. You know, obviously we got the great home crowd, have played well at home in the playoffs, so you know, we need to get our legs under us, quite honestly. Like, you know, we know their rest advantage, so getting home always helps with that, but definitely probably didn't have the juice tonight that we needed to, which is kind of, you know, it's going to hit it sometime.
Meanwhile, as far as the players are concerned, the Knicks are not satisfied, clearly, being up just 2-0. In fact, Karl-Anthony Towns yesterday after the game said they'll pretend like the series is 0-0 heading into Game 3.
I mean, we don't feel any closer than we did last game or any game. You know, it's back to, in our minds, it's 0-0. You know, we got to win the next game. It's the most important game of the year. And that's how we treat it. You know, we're hungry for the opportunity to go out there and play basketball at the highest level. But we also understand that, you know, you can never be satisfied in these positions and in the playoffs. So the mindset's going to continue to be 0-0 every single time we step on that court.
All right, let's go over to some Major League Baseball and talk some Blue Jays-Yankees. They split their series 2 apiece. The Jays were underdogs on the road. They end up winning this one. Tough series for Judge. He went 1 for 15 with 8 strikeouts. Probably every player goes through this over the course of the season, and that's what manager Aaron Boone said.
Understanding he's a guy that you never worry about at the plate, but Aaron Judge has been pretty quiet this series. Just what are you seeing from him in his at-bats?
Yeah, just going through a little bit right now. Usually that means good things coming on the other side. So, you know, a little in between probably. You know, fastball's got on him a little out in front of some other pitches. So usually, you know, anytime a hitter goes through it a little bit, it's usually a little timing related. I think that's all it is. So he'll get through it and somebody will pay the price real soon.
All right, now let's get to the Guardians and Tigers, and the Tigers' important series of the season to show that they can hang with Cleveland went the other way. Guardians dominate, win all 4 games, 3-1 yesterday. The Tigers have lost 5 games in a row. New catcher for Cleveland, Patrick Bailey, hit a home run after the game. He said he's getting adjusted with his new club.
We wanted to get you not because of the home run, but it helped. But getting you here and just getting comfortable, how has that worked out? Catching different guys, because obviously as a catcher, you're going through a little bit differently than maybe a guy that's playing right field.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's been a challenge, but I feel like I'm starting to get a little comfortable back there behind the plate, just knowing guys' shapes. I mean, this staff and bullpen's nasty. It's a lot of fun. Just trying to get to know everybody.
All right, meanwhile, the Mets seemingly are finding their footing a little bit. They edged the Nationals 2-1. They split the 4-game series. Bo Bichette, signed in the offseasons, had a quiet April, but May seems to be better. He drove in 8 runs in the series. Carlos Mendoza said Bichette is starting to get hot.
What are you seeing from Bo Bichette now that you weren't seeing a month ago with runners in scoring position?
Well, we know he's one of the best hitters with runners since he's been that type of player. I think it's just a matter of time. Ground ball found a hole today, but I think you see a player that is confident. He's putting some A swings on good pitches. He's pulling the ball when he needs to. He's using the whole field, like the guy that we all know the type of hitter he is.
All right, in the American League West yesterday, the A's beat the Angels for the 2nd straight night. 3-2 the final. Luis Severino, 10 strikeouts in 7 innings. Meanwhile, the Angels are, let's just be honest, an unmitigated disaster. Worst record in baseball, 17-34 on the year. But the A's seemingly hanging around in the playoff picture. Here's Mark Kotze on that series win versus Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a great series, right? We got walked off the first night, and for this team to, come back and and really grind 3 wins out says a lot about the guys out there that are, they're competing every night, and they go out to win games. I think overall, tonight's game, Severino, after he gives up 2 in the first, just really got back right in the groove, and I mean, to go 7 innings, get 10 punch outs. It also says a lot about him out there just battling.
All right, back to the National League we go. Pirates beat the Cardinals yesterday 6-2, and they end up winning the series. Brandon Lau, what a series and what a season he is having for Pittsburgh. Great trade for them. He had another home run yesterday, an inside the park home run, and Lau has been fantastic. Over in the National Hockey League, we had a blowout in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Boy, Montreal Canadiens appear to be headed toward the finals, don't they? How did they beat the Carolina Hurricanes 6-2, with the Hurricanes being minus 200 on the money line? What in the world? Tonight, we've got the Golden Knights taking on the Avs, and the Avs are at home in Denver, and they're minus 194 on the money line tonight. All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. In case you missed it last night, the NBA's Eastern Conference Finals now has a heavy favorite. That, of course, is the New York Knicks, after the Garden was basically a dismantling of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Final score last night was 109-93. So the Knicks, they win, and they cover that 5.5-point spread. By the way, they've covered the last 2 games in this series and have now won 9 straight playoff games this season. Jalen Brunson had just 2 points at the half. He ended up with 19 points and 14 assists. But the big story out of this one was Josh Hart, who had his best game of the playoffs with 26 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists. Donovan Mitchell had 26, and James Harden had 18 for Cleveland. But now they are up against it. So certainly with all the emotions that went in and the effort that went in to winning that first game, how did the Knicks approach Game 2? Well, here's Mike Brown giving his thoughts after the game on exactly what they did.
Mike, after coming off a thrilling comeback like that, do you coach it all to the emotions of, settling down and being ready for the next game after a game like that?
It's a good question. Not really. We have a veteran group. Anytime you're in the playoffs, you obviously need a little bit of talent. You need a little bit of luck, and then you need a little bit of skill. And And, all those things came to play for us, coming back from 20 points down with that little bit of time to go. And I think our guys understand that we got away with one, and we don't want to put ourselves in that position again because Cleveland's a great team. They're well coached, and they have great players on their team, and they're not going to let that opportunity slip from their hands again. So, we've talked about that, but not necessarily about the emotional part.
Could easily stole game one. I thought our process was right tonight. So that gives me confidence going home. Obviously we got the great home crowd, have played well at home in the playoffs. So, we need to get our legs under us, quite honestly. We know their rest advantage. So, getting home always helps with that. But definitely probably didn't have the juice tonight that we needed to, which is kind of, it's going to hit it sometime.
All right, let's get to the NBA tonight. I think we probably should talk some Knicks basketball with Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. That's why he's on the show, right? Not talk about Kalshi and Polymarket, but to talk about his Knicks winning. Congrats, Sam. I know you got to be happy. 2-0, huh?
Yeah, Craig. That's not why I'm on the show. That's why I'm alive. It's a great time in New York. 10 wins in a row, I think now. It's honestly insane.
Playing
Hopefully
great.
it has a good ending.
Yeah, definitely playing great. But hey, got to win it all, right? That's what the Knicks have been trying to do for a really, really long time. All right, so now let's get to our topics of the day, and we'll start off with Polymarket adding multi-leg contracts to their sports operation here. And just simply put, this is not something we thought that event contract companies would do a year ago, but now that they've kind of slid themselves into the sports betting space, it's only natural that they all are going to take advantage of what people like to bet on most or predict on most, which is of course parlays. And not calling it parlays, but guess what? It is.
Yeah, Craig, I think I found my new favorite term for a product that's not gambling, but definitely probably is gambling. It's called a combinatoric athletic outcome contract. Combinatoric athletic outcome contract is what is now calling their new parlays, which they're going to launch any day now, which we've seen Kalshi obviously make a similar move. And to your comment about, not thinking that exchanges would ever do this, I don't think that anyone, when they passed the law in, I think, the 1930s, that allowed the CFTC to exist, that allowed these, contracts to be traded on the outcomes of grain prices and weather prices and other, sort of prediction activities. Nobody ever thought that you would have sports event contracts traded on these platforms, and certainly not parlays, which obviously, if you're tuned into this network, are the cornerstone of sports books. They really are the reason that sports books became profitable in the first place. They're America's favorite bet types. They allow you to combine multiple bets together, kind of an all-or-one sort of situation where you receive a larger payout for a smaller stake. So no surprise now that they're getting into the sports space that more exchanges are doing this. Polymarket, obviously their biggest rival is Kalshi, which did this earlier, or I should say late last year rather, in the middle of football season, launched parlays, and it's been a good business for them. Kalshi's grown their business to about 20% of all trading activity that happens on Kalshi is now a parlay, and I think about 85% of all the activity that happens on Kalshi as well is sports in general. So Polymarket, they were out of the U.S. for a long time. They relaunched their U.S. offering just recently. They've been operating largely offshore. So this is part of them trying to ramp up and compete with Kalshi, which certainly has been dominating all the headlines when we talk about prediction markets and just sports betting beyond that, rather. So it'd be interesting to see how the product actually looks once it gets up to speed. And it's going to be an interesting one to keep following as, the prediction market space keeps blurring into sports betting.
Yep, and that leads into our next story, which you could read about over at LegalSportsReport.com. Regulation of prediction markets, very similar to how sports books are regulated. But naturally, prediction markets are going to fight, just like sports books, to not be regulated. In the end, Sam, I do think that this is coming. If they want to operate, they're probably going to have to.
Yeah, these companies wouldn't be doing their job if they weren't fighting to not be regulated as sports betting companies. When you talk about sports betting and gambling, it has a very lengthy history in the United States of being overly regulated, overly taxed, because at the end of the day, many states view it as a sin industry, something that obviously can create problems or, prey on, problem gambling, addiction, those sort of real issues that exist out there. But one of the reasons that prediction markets have been able to exist and, quite frankly, become so popular in so many states is because they don't have to follow those rules. So obviously now Congress is really paying attention to that as well. The Senate Commerce Committee held a hearing this week on sports integrity and prediction markets, sort of in one umbrella of a subject. Even beyond sports, prediction markets have caught the ire of lawmakers' attention, with regards to large bets being placed on military actions and other sort of insider trading accusations that have gone on. But this hearing specifically looked at sports integrity. Obviously, sports betting, as it's become more popular, has become no stranger to a number of scandals pop up over the past couple of years. So as sportsbooks kind of heighten those, integrity safeguards, lawmakers are also interested in what prediction markets are doing as well. So Senator Marsha Blackburn, who chaired the committee, called it sort of the first step in figuring out kind of how this is all done, which is, stop me, Craig, if you've heard that before, first step in kind of figuring out how this is all done. It's kind of been the story of markets for the last, year or so, and probably will continue to be the story, quite frankly, until it all comes down to the Supreme Court. But it's definitely notable that it's getting more attention by having a hearing in Congress. But then you have to ask, what is Congress actually going to do about it? That's sort of another farther step that they probably have not crossed that bridge yet. But it is getting their attention at least. So we'll see if anything comes of it or if it's just more talk.
Yep, would agree. All right, let's cap it off real quick, Sam. The state of Ohio, having one of their regulators who helped with sports betting ad rules, has decided to retire. Certainly, this is a transcendent type individual here who understood what kind of rules needed to go in place. Why did he decide? Any clue why he decided to call it quits here, Sam? Or is it just simply put, it was just time for him in terms of his career?
Yeah, I think he just wanted to retire, honestly, Craig. He's had a great career. Matthew Schuler. Normally, this would not be big news, but we're talking about Ohio, which was the first state to ban risk-free bet advertising and put kind of the biggest restrictions on sports betting advertisements, which forced them, because they advertise nationally, to kind of change all of their rules, to change all of their promotions. If you've been in sports betting for even a couple of years, you've seen how much risk-free has changed to, no risk and all this other language that sports books use. And he was really a pioneer behind all of that. So Ohio is a big state. Whatever they do, the country seems to follow. Now that he's out, we'll see if, states change or, kind of follow a similar policy, look to other places to kind of get that innovation.
Sam, have a great weekend. We'll catch up next week.
Greg, you too.